Hey guys, Mrs. Karaz here. Today we're looking at Chapter 21, Section 4, Shaping the Peace. Alright, so we're picking up with Wilson's 14 points plan, right? And we talked about that briefly in last section. This was Wilson's plan about how we should approach peace with Germany. It's just a plan, right? But we want to see where our president is coming from as we approach these peace talks. So points 1 through 5 dealt with factors that led to the war, right? And here Wilson demanded the elimination of secret international agreements, freedom of the seas, right, where no nation has control over what's happening in the ocean, free trade among nations, reduced militarization, right? We saw that militarization was a factor that led to the war, so let's cut it back. The settlement of colonial claims as well, so this would allow ruling countries to listen to and help the people that they've colonized, right? Not just take control for their own selfish gains. Points 6 through 13 dealt with specific territorial issues that arose after the war. So these points demanded self-rule for nations in the Austria-Hungary and Ottoman empires who wanted to break those empires up. And it also demanded self-determination, or the right for a group of people to determine their own form of government. Point 14 dealt with ensuring future peace, and it demanded the establishment of an international organization that works together to protect world peace. And this was Wilson's favorite part of the plan. If only one part went through, this is what he was aiming for, right? He really wanted to see us, ensure that we could work together peacefully and democratically in the future. So this is what Wilson takes with him as we go into peace talks. A peace conference was held between the Allies and Germany. The Allies were represented by the Big Four: Woodrow Wilson, who was there representing the U.S., George Clemenceau, who was there representing France, David Lloyd George, who is representing Britain, and Vittorio Orlando, who is representing Italy. So Wilson, as we saw in those points, wants peace, right? He wants to set us up for a strong, peaceful future. The others are saying, listen, Germany did a lot of wrong in this war. They need to be punished, right? So we're seeing these two thoughts on the same side of the table, and we're going to see perhaps a balance of these two things as the Allies come up with the Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles is the treaty that ends World War I, and it includes these punishments for Germany. First of all, Germany was going to lose territory on its borders and had to surrender any colonies that it was in possession of. Germany also had to pay reparations to the Allies, and reparations are payments to cover war damages. As you can imagine, there were lots of war damages, right? So Germany is going to get into a very bad economic situation, which is going to be a direct lead-in to World War II. But we'll get there when we get there. One more punishment for Germany: the size and structure of its military was limited. These other nations, the Allied nations, really wanted to see Germany being put under control more. So Wilson was actually really unhappy with how harsh these punishments were, but he agreed to them anyway because the Treaty of Versailles also established the League of Nations, and the League of Nations was an organization of many different countries that would provide for peaceful conflict resolution in the future, and would also enforce punishments for anyone who broke the peace, right? So Wilson's willing to suck it up and deal with the harsh punishments for Germany, as long as we also get the League of Nations in there, which we know was his baby from the 14 points plan. The treaty was signed on June 28th, 1918. Bottom line is, Germany was angered by the treaty and felt it was really unfair. Like I said, this anger is going to resurface in another world war sooner rather than later. So Germany's not the only one who needs to sign treaty to declare peace. Each country came and had their own plan with the Allies at this time. Some changes that arose from these treaties. So first of all, Austria-Hungary no longer existed. The empire was split into the nations of Austria, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. Serbia and other Balkan nations joined together to form Yugoslavia. Poland declared independence. and the Ottoman Empire was broken up and became the Republic of Turkey. So we're just seeing like big changes across the map, thanks to the end of World War I. So after negotiating the Treaty of Versailles, right, Wilson was there representing the U.S. Now he returns to the U.S. and has to have it approved by the Senate. That's how checks and balances work, right? Fact is, many senators opposed the treaty, particularly the part about the League of Nations, which was what Wilson wanted in the first place, right? Henry Cabot Lodge, for instance, who was a Republican senator from Massachusetts, sorry, that's my phone, worried that entering the League would prevent the U.S. from acting independently in its own interests, right? If we have to worry about other nations, well, that sounds a lot like the issues that got us involved in World War I, where the alliances were happening. So Wilson decides to travel around the U.S. to garner support for the League. Ultimately, the Senate rejects the treaty, and we're going to see that this limits our nation's power in the world in the years to come. We get a few problems after the war, obviously. Influenza is a big one. Many soldiers caught the flu in Europe and unintentionally brought it back to America. The flu actually reached epidemic proportions at this time, killing 500,000 Americans between 1918 and 1919. Unemployment rose when soldiers returned home. There were a lot more job seekers than available jobs, right? Because now all of these men who had been employed, left to serve in the military, are now coming home and want their jobs back, right? What are we going to do with the people who are filling in? Managers used this to their advantage. They felt that they could manipulate union workers because of the job statistics. There aren't that many jobs. You may want better conditions, but you're not going to find them anywhere, right? And in 1919, over 4 million workers actually went on strike. And our last slide for the day and for the chapter, the Red Scare also takes place after World War I. So Americans feel that communists, the Red, would rise in the U.S. And we know that communism stands in direct opposition to capitalism, right, which is really the main way of life here in the United States. So all those labor problems that we saw on the last slide, a lot of people thought that was led by communist feelings. And communism pushes this idea that the working class will arise and, get their due. The Attorney General at the time was A. Mitchell Palmer, and he ordered immigrants who were suspected of communism to be deported or returned to their home countries. These were called the Palmer Raids, and they lasted into the 1920s. We're going to see a lot more trouble or fear of communism as we move throughout the 20th century. But that is for another chapter and for another day. We're going to end it here. Night, guys.